Welcome to the Mise-en-Scene Weekly podcast, where we harken back to our college debate days and pick two movies with the same theme to clash, like Cracker Jacks not deserving a spot in the 9-snack concession roster. This week's episode is focused on our country's strange and odd fascination of a stick and ball game with the natural taking the batter's box against 8 men out. Come join Jonathan and Stephen for another week of desirably less plot chatter and hopefully more film banter. We are Scene Weekly, and welcome to our world.
Welcome to our world. Yeah, we're here. Um, before we talk movies, I want to bring up this idea that Cracker Jacks is not in the top 10 uh, snacks for a baseball game. I mean, it's got to be there, right?
Have you ever had Cracker Jacks at a game before? Let's back up. Do you like baseball? It appears you do.
Yes, Jonathan. I am a big baseball fan. I have been
Do
ever
you have
since.
a team?
Let me think. Yes, I do. I have a team that I've been following since I was a wee little boy, and I've been lucky enough to watch them have success and failure at the same time. But it's been a joy. It's the Atlanta Braves. I mean, come on, Tomahawk Chop.
Interesting. From what I have
Oh,
heard, you are still a wee little boy in some way, shapes.
some way, shape, or form. Yes, that's
Yeah,
true.
I've been told. I don't know for myself. But anyway, I myself have zero fascination with the bat and the ball game that we have with the clay and the grass. And but I did once. I used to play it from time to time, and it was just boring.
I think we've had conversations in the past where I've tried to convince you that baseball is amazing. It's great to watch. It's America's pastime, and you just refuse in your bones to come around. That's
I've
it
been
to each his
to
own.
I've been to, I've been to games before, many games. I've never been that excited at any of the games. I can't really say I've even stayed for an entire game before in my whole life.
Really,
Maybe
you got
when
to
I was
get you
maybe
got to
when I,
leave before the traffic gets backed up, huh?
yeah, that seems like. I think though, with that being said, baseball is a very boring sport to me, and I apologize. I'm not apologizing. It sucks. It's just explicit, objectively.
I have a quote for you, Jonathan,
Okay.
that I knew this would come up. And this is from, I believe it's from the Ken Burns documentary. And this is a sports writer, Joe Posnanski. He says, I never argue with people who say baseball is boring because baseball is boring. And then suddenly it isn't. And that's what makes it great. That's true.
Dumbest quote. It's not true. It's not. It's still boring. It's still always boring. I've sat very recently and seen with you a game, and I watched hilariously at 20 Braves fans collectively together at a bar. None of them give two flying fucks what's going on in the game. You go to a soccer bar for 90 minutes. Nobody gives two shits what other human beings are doing around them. Everyone is glued to the screen. Now, I know soccer is much more exciting, but it seems like our fan base in America would have a huge argument to say there. I am just saying, quantifiably, I've never been to a game live or watching it on the TV where people seem that interested in it. And I'm just anecdotally giving my own.
Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to do. If and when,
Cancel this?
if and when the Braves make the postseason, a playoff game, it doesn't have to be the World Series. I'm going to personally buy you a ticket. We're going to go to a game and you're going to experience firsthand what that kind of atmosphere is all about. Just as you had me experience firsthand, a soccer match, a football match in London. And I
I have.
assure you,
I've been to multiple. I've been to playoff match. I've been to playoff games. Like I don't know. Now you're gonna say like it's the Mets or the Yankees. I've been to both, but I don't. It's just not for me. It's terrible. I've given it everything. I played baseball. It was my second sport. Played soccer before that. Didn't like soccer again until many years later. I was an all star in baseball, so was my brother. Sister, of course, didn't play, but like nonetheless, I was a pitcher. My dad was a pitcher. Played for the Phillies farm team, and probably a reason I hate baseball and will never enjoy watching baseball. But that's a different story, Stephen. I think it generally just sucks as a sport. But why don't we get into why I think actually the movies around baseball are far better than the actual sport itself, which is interesting because football, I feel like, is a little more exciting. Not the non-football, like American football stuff, and basketball, of course. I think both you can have good movies and exciting sport, but not with baseball. It doesn't happen.
Baseball movies. How did you land? Well, first off, how did you land on your movie, and what other baseball movies was in consideration?
This is a very good question, one in which we don't really delve into too frequently, and I appreciate you asking. So I have watched every single. I think if you look at the top 25 of baseball movies, I've seen all of them. With that being said, that doesn't mean I've seen all of them recently, so my memory is not the best, especially with movies. Generally, I can watch a movie now and a year later be like remember nothing almost, except for things I've seen like 100 times.
Like The
Bill
Lion
Durham
King.
was what? Yeah, Bill Durham was up there. Field of Dreams is up there. The Natural just won over, simply put, because I watched it with my mom very, very long time ago, and I've seen it a few times since, and I just really like the feeling of it. And I also love Robert Redford; he's one of my favorite actors of all time, and so it just seems like a very kind and nice person. Just in
He
as a
is kind of nice. I've had the pleasure of meeting him a few times.
wow, we're just name dropping here. Look it up. Um, my that's strong. Um, but it was like I didn't want to choose Field of Dreams. It just seemed like an easy one. Although I will say that it's I like it more than I do The Natural. I would say overall, and I think Moneyball is actually the best baseball movie of all time, objectively. And I think that that's the difference between like saying creating a rankings list of like what's your favorite movie versus what do you think others would say to that question. Like Godfather 2 and Godfather 1, Shawshank Redemption are going to be top of people's lists on the best movies of all time. But I like The Natural. So you can go shit the bed, people that don't
Yeah,
agree.
I
Hashem,
chose 8
by
Minute.
the way, shout out Hashem to my friend who I was telling him about this podcast in advance, and his response was, The Natural is basically before I told him I was choosing The Natural, he goes, The Natural is too easy of a response. And I was like, The Natural. And then he just put a heart emoji next to it.
There you go. I had a couple
What about
movies in
you?
mind. Yeah, I had a couple movies in mind that I wanted to dive into and discuss, but I chose, like I said, I use this podcast a lot to, discover movies that I've never seen. Because, as you know, there are quite a bit that stand out to you that I've never seen before. So I chose Eight Men Out, John Sayles' direction, and the other two that I really considered was A League of Their Own and The Sandlot. And I thought those were kind of right up there as like top tier baseball. And they are. They're like one of the best. So
I couldn't choose the Sandlot for the exact same reason of Field of Dreams. I just felt like for both, it's the feeling. It's hard to argue against either of those movies, and I didn't want to think poorly of any of them, to be fair. But in both of them, I love to death, especially The Sandlot. I mean, no, both of them, they're fantastic. Baseball movies are great. They're
yeah,
lovely.
they're
Um,
great.
Field of Dreams gets into like some weird zones from time to time of just the whole reality of dreams coming to life, but it's fun. Speaking of, we were actually going to go on my friend's Budash's 50th birthday. We were supposed to go actually stay at the house, the same farm, the same house where they shot that. They actually have an Airbnb kind of that you can go and book the place out. Yeah, it's like $700 a night. Um,
Wow. Is Budash a big baseball fan or
Field
what?
Field of Dreams fan.
Got
Yeah,
it.
big fan of
Okay.
Field of Dreams. Not baseball. He doesn't like baseball, but because nobody does. When it deep inside of your heart, you may wear the jerseys, you may have a bat at home, but you're going to use that bat for a burglar, not to go do anything. Anyway, I need to stop hating on baseball. This is about baseball, in fact, and we did this because of spring training,
Well,
which is
baseball started. Yeah, baseball has begun.
wild because we were together last week and we watched the first Braves game together, and
We
then they
did.
was it 9-3 or something like that?
Something like that. Yeah, they spanked the Phillies. Yeah, it was great.
Which was hilarious because it was like 2-0 the Phillies, and then nobody was looking at the screen, of course. And then they looked at the screen, they're like, "Wow, it's 9-3," and nobody thought anything to like. That was it.
That's the beauty of baseball. You can be hanging out, kind of watching the game, having conversations with your friends, drinking a beer, and then something happens and you're glued and it's magnetic, and then it's over, and then you can go back to your conversation. It's a very kind of, it, it's a fluid game that you can just kind of see and watch and pay attention to when you want. That's great. And it's.
It's kind of like watching a show or a movie, and you don't watch 96% of it, and you're waiting for that 4%, and then you have no idea what happened in between. That doesn't seem like a very good sport or movie or anything to watch. But I get, you do you. If you want to waste 162 million hours a year of your life, feel free.
Was that because there's
Pretty good.
162 games in a season?
Yeah, I
You're
know a little bit about
You know a
baseball.
little bit, yeah, yeah. When you played baseball, did you have any nicknames? Because everybody has a nickname in baseball. But I mean, pretty much like major leagues and stuff like that. Everybody has a nickname. Did you have a nickname?
BSD. No, I did not have a nickname. Actually, I was quite shy. Didn't really like to, even though I was a pitcher, I didn't like to have the attention on myself. I didn't. We didn't have nicknames. I was probably in the area of too dumb of teams that I played for to have nicknames for each other, or not. We lacked creativity. Although we did. I was a starting pitcher above a guy named Ricky Bowling, who eventually went to University of Florida and won a national title with them.
Oh wow.
My claim to fame of baseball. And 2 years after that, he was destroying me, but I'll leave that part out. Uh, but by the way, I don't have. What about you? Do you have a nickname? I actually have a question for you as well.
Well, I did have a nickname, and it wasn't. It was mainly due to the fact that I wasn't the best hitter, but I was really fast. So my nickname was Lightning. I could run the bases if I could get on the
Strike
base.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things.
The problem was getting there.
Yeah, the problem was getting on base.
Put your elbow out.
Yeah, yeah, I'll take a hit.
Did you have a favorite player growing up?
Yes, yes. I had a favorite. Well, with my team, the Atlanta Braves, I obviously had favorite players, but there was always, one pitcher that I really, really liked. I collected all of his cards, and then one player that I really, followed, and that was Greg Maddux,
Yeah.
one of the best pitchers of all time, and Chipper Jones, switch hitter, third baseman for the Atlanta Braves, Hall of Famer, both in the Hall of Fame.
You didn't
Those
like
were the.
Gavin or Smoltz?
I love Glavine. I love Smoltz. I love those guys. But the fact that like, if you read some of the stories that Greg Maddux did,
I know.
like it's incredible. He would literally during the regular season pitch a ball and let the guy hit a home run because he knew that he would face him in the postseason, and he would play mind games with him so he could strike him out in the postseason. He was on another level.
That's also what you say in hindsight, though. Like, let him have that one because I'm with a guy.
Yeah, read
But
some
I get you.
stories. Yeah.
My favorite, still to this day, because I haven't seen baseball other than Braves game, was always, and I know this is going to create some angst here, but I loved Daryl Strawberry. Love.
Ah, why did you love Daryl Strawberry?
Because for his stories as well, for very different reasons. But I am a huge fan because I can switch hit as well. I can hit left-handed pretty well. My throwing ability is not nearly as good as my hitting, but I used to switch as a kid, and so I loved hitting left-handed and just throwing the pitchers off. But Strawberry, of course, is a left-hander, and I love Ken Griffey Jr. as too. So basically, if you're hitting left and you're a pretty solid hitter, I probably liked you to some extent. I like Frank
Yeah.
Thomas as well, but Daryl Strawberry was my jam.
Yeah, Daryl Strawberry was great. And
And then
Ken Griffey
Jr.
Jr. had like the best swing in baseball. Uh,
has
has
still like
still
who's yeah. Have you seen him? They showed him golfing recently, and they're like, even golfing, it just is unbelievable.
really. I gotta watch that.
Yeah. It's like Bernard Lagat running, just like springy, just hitting it out of the park. Don't mind me. Anyway, The Natural versus Eight Men Out. Who wants to go first?
I can go first. You went
Sure.
first last week, so we're gonna
Let's do it.
talk about Eight Men Out. It's funny that you brought up Moneyball because I feel like this movie is like the Moneyball version from the 80s. Just because like it's not really about baseball, but there's baseball in it, and it's a story that's structured around baseball, but
Yeah.
it's not really, you know what I mean? You're not really following the games or anything like that. It's just
But that's every single baseball movie. Like almost to a T every single like Major League may be different, but it's still not about baseball really.
That's true. Yeah, yeah. But I feel like this one is even like even the amount of time that you see on the field is very, very minimal in this compared to The Sandlot or even The Natural. But anyways, Eight Men Out. It's a 1988 American sports drama directed by John Sayles. And it's based on a 1963 book titled Eight Men Out. It follows the White Sox, infamously known as the Black Sox in the 1919 World Series. The film is a dramatization of Major League Baseball's Black Sox scandal, in which 8 members of the Chicago White Sox conspired with gamblers to intentionally lose the 1919 World Series. And it kind of goes in depth of all of the players involved, the gamblers, the players, the owners, everything like that. And the big thing that you kind of see at the beginning of the film is it's funny. It kind of has this voiceover of how it's the best team in baseball at the time. They can't lose, and they're all like they're very unified as a team. But then it kind of cuts away from that, and you see that this team is very dysfunctional and not so unified as you would think. Um, and you get a sense that they are not being compensated for what they should. They just won the pennant and they were supposed to get a bonus. And they go down into the dugout to get the bonus. And what is it? 10 bottles of flat champagne. Would you be pissed if you thought you were going to get a bonus and you got some cheap flat champagne?
Well, the cheap part maybe would define my response to it, but yeah, that wouldn't be too nice. I mean, I remember my dad when he was trying to make it. I wasn't even born yet, but I was told this. My mom basically said this was like late '60s, I think, or early '70s. Um, Go the route of an insurance salesman. My uncle went that path, and she was like, he's fairly successful at it. You are making absolutely no money. So I think it was pretty common back in the day to not make too much money. But I would be upset. You win the pennant, you should probably get something more than cheap champagne, right? I mean, you can't even spray it very well.
Yeah, yeah. You can't spray. You can't do much with it. It's so you have this group of guys. They're on the team, and they get approached by I think his name is Sleepy Bill Burns. It's another nickname. All these people were like former baseball players. Christopher Lloyd plays Sleepy Bill. The reason he got that nickname is because he really didn't try too hard on the field. He was a bad baseball player. Um, but they kind of connive and try and get some feelers out there, if you will, of who would be interested in throwing the World Series for some money. The specific amount is $10,000. But what they do need is they need to get the 2 top pitchers on the team, right? And that's the only way you can do it. You
Yep.
can't do it without them. Um, so they try to get Eddie Cicotte, aka Knuckles. He's a knuckleballer. You don't see too many of the. There's actually no knuckleballers in the game anymore. The last one was R.A. Dickey. But anyways, Knuckles, Eddie Cicotte, he's the one that they go to first, and they say, "Hey, $10,000," and he's like, "No, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it." But then he goes to Old Roman, the owner of the team, Comiskey, and he says, "Hey, we had a deal that if I win 30 games, I get a $10,000 bonus." Lo and behold, the owner says, "Well, you only won 29 games." And Eddie's like, "Come on, you sat me for 3 weeks in August. Well, that was to rest your arm, Eddie. You didn't win 30 games. It's 29 is not 30." And that is the kind of instigator for Eddie to be like, "I'm going to take the money. I'm going to go with the gambling route." Once they get Eddie, everything kind of falls into place. They get lefty, another pitcher, so they have the two top pitchers. They got six. It's debatable if it's 5 or 6 with Bucky, if he actually was in on it. But they get the best hitters, aka Shoeless Joe Jackson. Another great nickname. That's one of the best nicknames, I feel like.
It is the
Um,
best nickname by far. Yeah.
do you know how he got that nickname?
No, well, yeah. I mean, I know the story behind him actually losing a shoe and continuing to run. I mean, from
Well,
what I
no, basically, yeah, he actually took off his shoes in the minor leagues because he was getting blisters,
oh,
and
I know that story.
and somebody yelled out, "Hey, Shoeless Joe!" And that's kind of the name stuck. But yeah, they get Shoeless Joe, they get the rest of the players, and they get some of the gambling titans in on it as well. And that's kind of the movie, right? You're following the scandal that how these guys are going to throw the World Series. You see the montages in these films are great. I love. You don't see this too much anymore, but when the movie conveys a lot of information by you seeing a newspaper kind of spinning at you, and then there's the paper. Uh, I love that. I'm a sucker for it, um, and you don't see that too much
Wow.
anymore.
I don't think you don't see it anywhere. This clearly isn't working, but um, I actually love that about both of these movies, where you get like the not only the montages, but I mean, it's just like the speeding up of like boring baseball games, which I appreciate. So, but a lot of baseball games are like that, or at least movies that represent. Did by the way, what do you think of Pete Rose in gambling? Do you think he should be, still left out of the Hall of Fame?
I'm a guy that says if you're a good player and he's one of the best, put him in the Hall of Fame. Put him in the Hall of
Why
Fame.
does it matter? Why does it matter?
He
He
bet
bet,
on himself.
he bet on like, dude. That I mean, if anything, he needs to have his own Hall of Fame section in the Hall of Fame. Like,
I agree.
on yourself, it's just James Tony, Ivan Tony for Brentford. He's a striker, one of the best strikers from England, probably second to Harry Kane. He, was betting on matches as well. He got an 8-month, 9-month ban, and I guarantee that if in the future he gets up for England Hall of Fame, he'll get it, or Premier League Hall of Fame, he'll get it. Just come on, just let PD in. Everyone thinks that this is ridiculous, but anyway,
What do you feel about
Harry Tight.
what do you feel about the guys that use steroids? Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Manny Ramirez, all those guys. They're not going to be in the Hall of Fame.
I could not give two shits that they like. Well, I'm on the flip side. Baseball, you should be able to PED until you look like a silverback gorilla and you are high fiving people and their hands are breaking. That's how many PEDs you should be able to use in baseball, because no one should care even remotely. Now, if you're like a boxer and you're doing that as a silverback gorilla, there are issues at play, such as a person's livelihood and are they going to be alive after this? Hitting a ball, I don't know, 50 feet longer? Come on, it's way more exciting. Like, if the natural came to life, like for example, Robert Redford, if he came to life and the only thing he could do is basically hit home runs, that would be pretty fucking exciting. You would be staring at the plate. So get out of here with all this PED like accusations, and not accusations. Talk. We all know that they did it. Who cares? I could not care less in baseball.
The integrity of the game, Jonathan. The integrity.
You could say that about every single sport, though.
It's true. I
It's
mean, there's been cheating in baseball since
in everything.
yeah, in everything. I mean,
There's no.
it's
There's
what
no.
humans
I mean,
do.
yeah, they're gonna cheat, but in baseball, it just does not matter. You're hitting. Your coordination's not going to get any better because you're juiced up. Come on, let them go. Anyway,
What about the one more about cheating? The Houston Astros in 2018. What do you feel about that controversy?
I have no idea what the controversy is.
I'll explain it to you real quick. They were playing the Dodgers in the World Series, and they had somebody in the outfield with binoculars looking at the pitch signals and what's coming, and they would literally radio down, and then in the dugout they would bang a trash can twice if it was
Yeah,
off speed, and then not bang it if it was a fastball. So they kind of knew what pitch was coming, and it was
I
well
guess
documented that they did that.
That's awful. That's terrible because you're actually utilizing the people. The like a manager is not involved. Um, Basically, nobody from the team. I mean, somebody from the team tangentially is involved, but like they're not on the. They're not actually playing. Or they're not in the dugout. They're not playing. They're not a manager. So no, that's extremely fucked up. It's the first time I've ever heard this. But like they should be banned. If did they win?
Yeah, they won.
How is that even possible?
They still have the title. It never went back to the Dodgers. But I think there was like a 1 year ban for one of the players or managers. I have to look into it, but it was kind of a slap on the wrist, not so much what these 1919 Black Sox got.
That's wild.
Sad.
That to me is where cheating like that should never exist ever. Like it's not a you're making basically it's not an even playing field.
No, that's gaining a hard advantage for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
But we'll go back to the movie.
sure.
The uh, the the cast is great. Charlie Sheen, John Cusack, like I said, Christopher Lloyd. You got the dad from Frasier. No, yeah, the dad from Frasier as kid, the manager. Um, love the cast. And you know what? It's one of the first baseball movies that really looked like they were baseball players, like they could actually play the sport. And that was one thing that that Landis he's like, I'm going to cast people that can actually swing a bat, and not somebody that whatever. And even uh, DB Sweeney, the guy that played Shoeless Joe Jackson, he went out of his way to learn how to hit left-handed. He even played for a minor league team over the summer, and tried to get into the character. But he had to learn how to swing left-handed. He said that's one thing that he has over Ray Liotta, who was Shoeless Joe Jackson in Field of Dreams. Ray Liotta batted right-handed, so yeah, DB Sweeney doing a little bit more character actor kind of thing.
Yeah,
But anyway,
Charlie Sheen went a step further and he's like, you know what? I'm going to do back to back baseball movies.
that's true. That's true.
This in Major League.
That was another one I was considering. It's
They would have
hilarious.
thrown this. I mean, collectively, if you were to ask me what's my favorite baseball movie, it's Field of Dreams or Major League. But like objectively, it's definitely Moneyball. But Major League's hilarious. But Charlie Sheen actually played baseball as well. So I mean, there's a reason that they look like they know what they're doing to some extent.
Yeah, yeah. And before, baseball movies did not look like they knew what they're doing. But anyways, we get to the World Series. Shit goes down. They lose the first 2 games. The third game, it's a rookie pitcher up. He wins it. People start getting antsy. One thing that I did like is, and this is a true to the fact, that if in the first game, you'll know the fix is on if Eddie Seacott hits the first batter he faces. And what happens? The first pitch, it's a strike. People are getting a little worried, like what's going on. Second pitch hits the batter. The fix is on. Everybody knows it. Yeah, and they end up, losing the World Series. They were the best team in baseball by far. They should have beat the Reds, but they didn't. Then the journalists start, throughout the series, they kind of circle guys that say, "Hey, this doesn't look right. This guy looks like he's dropping balls. This, that, and the other," and they start kind of formulating a story that the White Sox might have fixed the World Series. And this is where the movie and the real life story kind of diverge. In the movie, it shows that, kind of right after the World Series, there's a trial that happens, but that's not true. The actual fact is the White Sox played well into the next season, and we're actually planning on throwing the 2020 World Series as well before this all happened. But what the owners decide to do to make sure that this doesn't happen, or that there's some checks and balances in the game, is they get a commissioner, and it's the first commissioner in Major League Sports. They get a former judge by the name of, great name by the way, Kennesaw Mountain Landis, and he comes in and he watches the trial. And just like baseball, the trial is fixed, right? They're not going to convict these guys. They get to walk away. Everything's hunky dory. But Judge Kennesaw Mountain Landis says, no. What they did was wrong. I feel it in my bones. Those 8 people, even if you didn't throw the World Series, you knew about it, you're out of the game forever. That's what happens.
Kennesaw Mountain is actually a mountain in Kennesaw, Georgia,
He was named after that mountain. Yeah.
which is hilarious.
Yeah.
Was it really?
I looked it up. I was like, that is such a coincidence. How did he have the same name as a mountain in Georgia that we used to run at?
Yeah,
But
it's like, wait a second.
he was born in Ohio, but his grandfather was in the battle at Kennesaw Mountain and died at Kennesaw Mountain. And they decided to name him after that.
That's fascinating. I'll throw out a nice fact of my own here. I actually found it interesting that I did actually know this before, and this is something that as a kid we used to do. Instead of bringing your gloves back, you just leave them at the base that you're at, or if you're in like in a fielding position, you would just right field or left field and throw your
Yeah.
gloves down. But eventually, and that's what professional sports used to do, as you see in this movie. But that changed in the '50s, where, as you might imagine, ground balls don't take kindly to gloves being placed just sitting there, which is a ridiculous thing. It seems like that would have been abundantly clear that you could step on it and a ball would hit it, and that would clearly impact play. But
And
some
how much effort is it to just carry
zero.
your glove
Not
back
much.
to
If
the
you're
dugout?
running. Well, baseball players don't run, but like you would walk back, of course. But I just found that fascinating. And then secondly, which I found hilarious, and I don't know the reasons why, but John Sayles, is that how you say his name?
John
Sayles?
Sayles, yeah.
Yeah, John Sayles. He actually was contractually obligated to make the film less than 2 hours, so it's an hour 59:48, like 12 seconds to spare. But he actually they prepared for this, and so he actually prepared all of the actors to say, "All right, you guys have to actually. We have a the script is too long for 2 hours. We're going to make you talk faster." So he actually literally made like I guess videos to show people and how quickly you can get through words, and then had them practice so that they can actually get this under 2 hour time
Wow.
for the final cut, which I was like, that's hilarious. Oh, it
Did
was
that
City for Conquest in 1940 was a film that he actually made them watch. I haven't seen it.
ah
I imagine they talk quick.
I mean, that's interesting. I mean, the budget on this was 6.7 million, so it was pretty low budget, and it only made
Oh,
5.7 million at the box office. So it didn't really make any money back, but it has a good Rotten Tomato score at 87%. So it's been well received over the years,
yeah, yeah,
and I mean, I think it does a good job of for people that are not into baseball or don't really follow baseball or maybe not have even heard of the Black Sox scandal. I think it does a good job of kind of painting the picture. Although there were some reviews that, they couldn't really tell who was who as a baseball player. They all kind of looked like the same white guy. That was
I
kind
had
of difficult for
that
people.
issue. Yeah,
Yeah.
I did you have yeah, Roger Ebert's analysis critique of it is pretty funny. Um,
This time I didn't read it.
Eight Men Out is an oddly unfocused movie made of earth tones, sidelong glances, and elliptic conversations. It tells the story of how the stars of the 1919 Chicago White Sox team took payoffs from gamblers to throw the World Series. But if you are not already familiar with that story, you're unlikely to understand it after seeing this film, which is kind of what you're saying of like, who the hell is who here?
Right.
It was difficult, but I think I don't really agree with Ebert here, but I do find it funny that we're being pedantic about. There's pedantic again
Oh, T-Rock. I like that.
about a movie, a baseball movie specifically. But did you have any famous or fun quotes that came along? Because I've got a couple.
I've got some, yeah. A fun one was the Cincinnati Reds players talking to each other. They say these guys don't look so tough, and the other guy says, "Yeah, that's what Custer said when the Indians took the field." Um,
that's that was one of my two. That's fantastic, but that's
uh,
terrific quote. My
another
favorite
one. Oh, go ahead.
my favorite was old Hap. I think he was sitting on a stoop or sitting on some stairs at the very end of the movie, and John Cusack's character, and he said, "I may be dumb, fellas, but I ain't stupid.
That's what that's one of that's one of mine too. I got that down. Yeah. But the most famous quote in the movie, and it kind of sums it up a lot. It's that ember moment that you kind of talk about. Is the kid on the steps of the court and seeing his idol, Shoeless Joe Jackson, walking out, and he says, "Say it ain't so, Joe. Say it ain't so." Um, that actually never really happened, but it does make for a good quote.
Yeah, beam me up, Scotty. Also didn't happen. There's a lot of these things that we just kind of take to be like reality when they're not. But it's a good quote.
Yeah.
Overall, enjoyed the movie more than baseball.
Would you? I got a question for you, Jonathan. Put yourself in the cleats of a Black Sox player. You're going to be a switch hitter, third baseman. You're a perennial all star, right? But you're making back then you're probably making $2,000 a year, which is pretty good. Somebody offers you to throw the World Series. You gonna do it?
No, it's a simple. Even
Even
if
with
you
the
as
flat
well,
champagne, you don't get your bonus.
just find a new sport, find a new job, find something else. Not cheating like this.
Okay, Roy Hobbs. I see that. Okay.
Yeah, I don't fuck around. Like no. Would I be shooting up PEDs before they tested people? Yeah, it's baseball.
Baseball.
Absolutely. USADA is going to come knocking at my door here in a second. Oh, I see that you're running some track and field races coming up, and you were talking about on your podcast that you don't have
You are
any
doping.
PEDs. Yeah, get at me. No, but overall, it was a fun one. I think I've had my baseball fix for this year. It's been a while. It's been a couple of years since I had the baseball kick. I did see Moneyball recently, but overall, I think I've seen all the baseball movies at least a couple times, and I think I'm good for a while. Good for a while. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Are we going to move on to your pick, The Natural?
The natural. Yeah, I think as well though. I think I've also delved into like all of the sports movies. I think I'm just good generally with sports movies. Although I am watching Manchester City's documentary that happens to be on Netflix right now. Treble Winners. If you have the time, the
Is
chance.
it good so far? I haven't started it.
I'm on episode 2, and it is terrific. And as a friend of mine said, I will not out him, but he said he is waiting to watch it in its entirety when his delivery of a gallon of lube comes. He's, he's a Manchester City supporter, and he happened to be with the two of us. I won't say the person's name, but he
Got
happened
it.
to be Istanbul for the finals of the Champions League last year in June. But anyway,
Fit.
The Natural. This Robert Redford also happens to be pretty much my mom's favorite actor, and so this definitely is near and dear to my heart. And so I do have very fond memories of not only The Natural but Robert Redford, even if it's the most outrageously out of tune baseball movie that they're pretty well. Field of Dreams probably is because it's not even existing. But The Natural, all he does, Robert Redford, is basically hit home runs, and from the very beginning. But the synopsis is this: on the way to a tryout with the Chicago Cubs, a young baseball phenom who is named Roy Hobbs, Robert Redford, is shot by the unstable Harriet Bird. After 16 years, Hobbs returns to pro baseball as a rookie, the last place New York Knights. Despite early arguments with his manager, Pop Fisher, Wilford Brimley, he becomes one of the best players in the league. Pretty simple, I would say, pretty straightforward. There's not like a whole complex notion of it. There's a lot of things that are actually, not to get into negative, but there's a lot of things rewatching this that were still entirely left out. For example, what did Roy do in those 16 years is still up in the air for me. I don't know how you feel. There are some intimations on stuff, but we don't actually get to know two things. We don't get to know exactly why he was shot, other than there was an unstable person who actually was trying to go after the Whammer,
The
is
Whammer.
which is played by or is supposed to be Babe Ruth. It's played after. It's modeled after Babe Ruth, and ultimately Roy Hobbs shoots or strikes out the whammer in 3 pitches, and somebody loses $10,000. There are a lot of bets being played there, but ultimately Harriet was actually going to go shoot the whammer. And for whatever reason, her instability after talking with Roy, and Roy was being very boisterous about how good he is going to be. And I think it's from a Ty Cobb quote, or no, it's from there was another baseball player back in the day that basically said, if you see me walking down the street, I want somebody to say that that's the greatest player to ever live. And so that's where Roy Hobbs, or I shouldn't say, Roy Hobbs' character actually got that quote from. Ted Williams is the name. And so that we don't get the answer to that. She transitions from killing the whammer to be like, I'm your ego. Basically, I'm going to kill. I'm going to kill your arrogance and your ego. And so
Yeah.
16 years goes by, and he gets back into the game. Seems like he's humble enough to take the last place stance for the Knights. Had a lot of issues. They were going to send him down to, I don't even know at the time what it was called. I guess single A or double A.
He was playing for the Hebrew Oilers before he got called up, which is
Got
a
it.
a great name for a team.
I like the Oilers, but nonetheless, it's fascinating the way they are able to transition, and the amount of actors they had: Robert Redford, Robert Duvall, Michael Madsen, the guy from Dumb and Dumber, the bad guy Mike Starr, Kim Basinger, the Christmas Story father with Darren McGavin and Glenn Close. I mean, it's just both movies were just like, well, who are you, and why you have like a minute of screen time, and you're like, this is Charlie Sheen, or like
Yeah.
whatever it might be, like this is wild. But it was fun. I liked
Yeah,
the idea.
this was a I haven't seen The Natural probably in 20 something years. So this was definitely kind of like a fresh watch for me. And I have a lot of thoughts on it. I have a lot of notes on it as well. So I'm ready to kind of dive in whenever.
Yeah, so the basis is this, and it's a similar structure, or simple structure, I should say, in that his his father was dying, had a heart attack, and he was trying to assist in that in the best capacity he can as a kid, and lightning struck a tree.
Yeah, it struck a tree, the tree that his dad died under and had a heart attack.
Oh, I just heard something in the background. That's all. Yeah, and had a heart attack. Tree got struck, and he decided to make Wonder Boy bat out of, or take the wood from that tree and basically make this amazing, incredible, perfect bat, basically to some extent. For which he just starts cranking home runs 16 years later after he was shot, like just cranking home runs. Now, can bats last that long and still be okay? The wood. This is probably a dumb question.
Well, he as you can see in the first scene when he comes into the dugout and meets Pop Fisher, he carries his bat in a briefcase, a suitcase that I'm sure keeps it very out of the elements and keeps it nice and pristine. And it doesn't seem like he's used that bat since he was a kid. He might not have, because we don't know what he did in that intervening 16 years. So yeah, it depends on the wood, depends on how he took care of it. But the fact that he had it in a briefcase kind of shows you that he took care of it really well.
Yeah, I was just thinking more specifically, does wood from bats need to have some sort of humidity like books do? Um, I have no idea. This is a random question, but like, I have a question for you. Did you throw? Did you practice baseball, like typical suburban neighborhood with your father, old Ken, going to baseball, catching the ball?
He,
Did you play catch?
I did. I played catch a lot. I had a pretty good arm. I was never a pitcher, but I could throw the ball pretty well. I even had like one of those kind of nets where I didn't even need my dad. I could just throw it and it would bounce back to me, and I'd catch it as a pop up, and that was great. But yeah, I played a lot of catch. What about you?
No, I that was my brother, and so I no, there was not to get into it, but there was uh if you didn't catch the ball with my father, you probably got that ball thrown back at you pretty hard. Um,
Got it.
Not when
Okay.
you were expecting to be. You weren't having, this is batting practice wasn't so fun for old Josh back in the day. I'll tell you that. So I tried to stay away from that as much as humanly possible. My mom actually would throw with me. Again, probably the reason I hate baseball, but nonetheless, I did throw a significant amount with my brother, and then I did throw a significant amount with the people of my neighborhood. I was a pitcher, so I pitched all throughout childhood, but I was actually a pretty good hitter too. Funny, I actually went hadn't played in a long time. Went with a friend maybe when I was a sophomore in college to go play just in a short field. Um, I hit like 22 home runs still can hit. Still can hit.
Wow. I have a question. I have a question for you, Jonathan.
Yeah.
In regards to Robert Redford, did because you're in your what you're 42, 40, 42,
43 here
40,
soon.
43 here soon. Did you look pretty much the same as you did now as a 16 or 17-year-old?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Precisely. If you see pictures, people are like, "Are have you aged a day in your life?" And I was like, "No, I just am
No.
the same person." Yeah, genetically.
Now, do you think Robert Redford did a good job of passing off as a 17-year-old kid in the first 20 minutes of this movie?
I think he was 47 at the time of shooting, and when he took off his shirt, it was pretty indicative of somebody who is not 16.
Yeah. They could have cast somebody younger. I mean, that's one of my big takeaways of this first 20 minutes is Robert Redford does not look like he just came out of puberty. Like,
Some like look at The Rock, for example, of like at 16. I think some people, and especially baseball players, they can tend to be more on the chunk along side, and so they could probably carry over. But nobody at 16, nobody's going to look that. He looks poor. It looks not very good for a 16-year-old for sure. It doesn't look like it's accurate. By the way, what was your Mr. Lightning over here? What was your position?
I played a few positions, but my main one was shortstop.
Ball
I
boy?
could.
Oh, got it. Got it. Do you
I was in the field, man. I was in the field. I was shagging balls. I was turning double plays. I was.
shagging balls? Did you enjoy shagging those balls? How would you shag the ball?
Just very gently. That's all.
Gently. I mean, you wouldn't want a ball shagged not gently, right? You
I'd be
must be
wearing
natural
protection.
at
I'd be
shag.
wearing protection, aka a glove.
You must be a natural at shagging balls.
They, they,
They just fall to you sometimes, if you will.
yeah, yeah. It's kind of like I
Go
gravitate
and
towards them.
scoop them up as a shortstop too. What would you do after you shag the balls?
Oh, I'd toss it to a friend.
First base,
First base, typically, yeah.
second, sometimes home. It seems like shagging balls.
Yeah, I'd rarely get to second base, but
By the way, do you know Randy Newman, the guy who did the music of The Natural? Can we talk about
yeah,
Randy?
I immensely enjoyed the soundtrack. Immensely enjoyed the score, the music of this movie. It got nominated for an Oscar for the score, and literally yesterday, while I was writing my notes, I had that score in the background because it was great. It was great.
It was terrific. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It made me so excited about watching a baseball movie that I was like, "Who the fuck is Randy Newman?" I started looking him up. I was like, "He has done some legitimate, like good effort musician
Oh, he
type
did Toy
stuff."
Story. He's done a lot of
He
stuff.
had his own band. No, but he's done like these most random of assortment of things, which I found very interesting. But God, what a terrific soundtrack that he laid together there. And also, I think just like I've already said it, but I think Robert Redford is probably the nicest human being that there is.
Oh, Bob is great. He's a very, very kind guy.
Bob, I call him Bob.
Yeah.
In between my anyway, I love
I
the
got to talk. Go ahead.
yeah. Go ahead. Two things or one thing I actually between both movies I find hilarious and they're very common in baseball movies is the slow motion, like the montage and slow motion like shots are hilarious. Both are just I don't. I guess in sports movies you would have to slow it down to get that energy, to get that
You got
like
to get that dramatic effect. You got to get,
that building of suspense.
yeah.
Um, but I just love it in baseball because it's so slow motion and it's quite utilized in pretty much every single baseball movie. But I appreciated that. But over to you, Sally.
Um, I just want to talk about the narrative of this film and the themes and the what I didn't catch when I watched it 20 years ago was how much this is tied to um, just the hero's journey. And this is very, very, this is like a almost, it ties into Homer's Odyssey very, very well. And they even bring that up in the beginning of the film. And I, watching it with that kind of eye towards it, I was blown away by how they could make this movie, a baseball odyssey. And even, um, through through different means and different ways of telling the story. But I thought it was great. Even like the name, Roy means king. Hobbs kind of has that indicative quality of being injured or hobbling. Even like in Homer's Odyssey, the Latin variant of Ulysses means one who limps. Um, you know, Homer's Odyssey, they kind of even mentioned that. Um, but there's so many different references and kind of nuances of that, as well as the Arthurian legend with Wonder Boy as the bat, as Excalibur, and things like that. So tying this all together, it really made the idea of yes, the story and the idea was outlandish, but it kind of had that mythic quality to it, and that's what you do as a kid. Is when you're looking at these baseball players, they're kind of like gods to you. Or when you're a kid, they're these figures that are just upon reproach, and they're what they do is superhuman, and that's kind of what this movie translates to.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of it's a more uplifting like Odyssey basically, and Roy would be Odysseus, and even in the beginning of the movie, I believe there's a line that says like, "Have you ever read Homer?" And I think
Yeah.
it's pretty clear what they're trying to get after, and Max would be the Vulcan, the god of fire. There's also a judge who happens to be sitting in darkness,
Yep.
like literally. And when the lights get turned on by Roy, he kind of scatters almost like a cockroach and starts creating a scene. Pop Fisher is like Zeus and the king of gods. But
You got
yeah,
the Cyclops, Gus, who
the
literally
light,
has.
the lightning bolt with the baseball bat. I mean, it's just all throughout. Basically, you have these archetypes being strewn about in front of you. But I think they did a pretty good job. I think it's more uplifting, maybe less interesting overall than the Odyssey. I really like the Odyssey. Haven't read it in a very long time, but I love the story behind it. But yeah, it's the hubris, the bringing down of somebody who's a little too high. Um, and boy, did they bring him down. I still want to know what happened in those 16 years, though. I don't think it's just not conveyed in any way, shape, or form. I'm left wondering.
If you had to formulate a guess or kind of just whatever, what do you think he did? Do you think he
I think
like?
he sold insurance. Yeah. I think that's what baseball players do when they're not baseball players anymore. And he's like, fuck this insurance, man. I'm going to go back. I'm going to grab my bat that hasn't been used. And old Wonder Boy and I are going to just crush. Make my father proud. Go get on
He,
that field.
I mean, and it's cool that there's actually art imitates life and vice versa. But like this even happened not to the same kind of storyline, but like I was watching this movie and I was thinking about this baseball player named Evan Gaddis who played high school ball and a little bit of like college ball, but he was kind of a good prospect, but he got into some drinking and drugs, and he fell out of baseball for a long time, and he became a janitor at like a local community college for a while, and then he got his life back together and started playing again, and a scout noticed him, and he eventually made it to the major leagues and crushed home runs and won a World Series with the aforementioned Astros. So like it's kind of cool that like these things can happen in sports, and they do. And it's not so outlandish to see, Roy Hobbs as a middling 36-year-old ball player coming in and cranking home runs, because it does happen.
If you took out 16 years from running and you try to get back into it, you're done. Like there's no coming back from that. Like you got there's just it's a zero, like 23-year-old is the average like Olympian basically. Baseball I think is pretty much the only
Jonathan, challenge accepted. Challenge
legit
accepted.
legitimate sport that actually you can come back. Do you think, Mr. Lightning, you can get back on the shortstop?
Yeah, maybe not maybe not in like the mile or the 5K. Maybe I'll try like
Oh,
I'll try the
run?
200 meter dash. Maybe I'll try
Oh,
that one out.
you're talking about running.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen. I mean, you didn't try when you did run, so why are you gonna try now?
There was spurts of effort,
Yeah, well, the spurts didn't last too long. I have a question for you in regards to, and I have a quote and a question. One of the quotes I actually found to be really, really cool because everyone pretty much was initially against Roy, not only the Whammer and Robert Duvall's character, but just everyone seems to be against him. And that 16 years of being gone and his answers to being where he was are very, very mysterious, even to me, like answering questions for Roy. But one of the quotes that really hit home, not hit home, but I thought it was hilarious when he was talking to Gus. He was like, "You're standing awfully close, Gus," but he says it in his Robert Redford tone. I can't tell if it's your toes I'm feeling or mine. I was like, that's good. That's very good.
That was good. Yeah.
He's like, I just want to play baseball, basically. Like, get off my back. And my question to you: were you or are you superstitious?
Oh, oh yes, 100%. Very much so. As a kid, yeah.
So let's go back to a kid. What were you superstitious about, and what did you do in regards to that superstition?
Um, Trying to think like specifics, but I do remember like things that you hear as a kid, like step on a crack, you break your mother's back. Uh, there was a time where I tried not to step on any cracks. I was protecting my mom,
Her back specifically.
her
So
back
I
specifically.
uh, let's go into sports superstitions. Did you have any sports superstitions?
Yeah, I mean, if I saw the Braves win a game and I was wearing a certain hat or T-shirt or something like that, I'm going to wear that same hat or T-shirt the next time I watch the game because and I'm not washing it. Underwear too. It's going to stay on the next time I watch it. Um,
I just don't understand superstition. As a kid I wasn't superstitious or religion was forced upon me, but I wasn't a religious person either. Same to this day, and I don't think anything on superstition, like even remotely, because if you if you actually objectify it and look at the people are like, this is going to happen if I'm wearing my rally cap. If you actually write down every instance that this is happening and this is not happening, the numbers are just going to tell you that you're a piece of shit, basically. And the superstition doesn't exist. The problem is you got people that are conflating it with religion and conflating it with the sporting methods, for which it can affect, basically, because if somebody, a player, and I'm not talking about superstition for non-players. I don't care about them because I think it is zero impact. But like, if a player doesn't have his favorite shorts or hat or whatever it might be, it's like, oh, now I'm gonna lose, and that mentality bleeds into everything else. And then people around him who are also players are thinking, wow, he doesn't have his famous shoes or his whatever it might be. It's like, we're not going to play the same. If somebody actually believes in that, actually, it can have an impact. Otherwise, I think superstition is just such bullshit, and it
are
makes
you
me
saying that's the power of belief or the power of like psychology being
yeah.
detrimental to your performance?
I don't think superstition actually exists, but I do believe that you can the power of belief will change you. And if that's you're convincing yourself because the shorts are winning you games, feel feel free to do whatever you think. If I and I've been on plenty of teams where people were highly highly superstitious. It didn't make sense to me, but you do you. People didn't can do
Yeah,
what
I
they.
mean, we even did this thing. I remember in high school, I was on the high school varsity soccer team, and we would. This was in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and we would right before our first playoff game, like the night before, we'd go to a friend's house, and we'd all get these hair bleach dyeing kits, and we'd all bleach our hair blonde before the game. And we still didn't win the playoffs, but it was kind of like a It was a psychological thing, I think. I don't know.
That's what England did for the English the soccer team, the English national soccer team over there. Everyone basically dyed their hair blonde. They're like, we're gonna win Euros, and then they didn't.
Didn't happen.
And it's like, but nobody ever talks about the superstitions, like the flip side of it. It's like maybe you lost because you had the dyed hair. Why didn't you just stick to your hair normal? But I think
Because I got those frosted tips after a few months. Some people dye their hair back to their original color. I got the frosted tips.
in that day and age, I actually was just getting frosted tips naturally or from a barber. But I didn't even mention this at the very beginning, but it was fascinating. I didn't know your movie was about a book, but so was The Natural. So both
It's
movies
true.
that we chose, which was not a decision we made, but were both books before this. I think that
And it
both books actually are very different than their movies, though, which is often the case.
yeah, the natural kind of fits more into my poem that I've performed many times called Casey at the Bat. In the original book for the natural, um, Roy Hobbs did not hit a game winning home run. It was a little bit more dour of a circumstance. I haven't read the book, but that's what I heard.
That's correct, and yeah, the end scene that you're speaking to, he doesn't have his bat because he actually broke his wonder bat from that tree that he made, and so the ball boy, which who actually went to go get a very nice piece of wood from a local hardware store. Roy actually helped him make a bat, and he uses that bat to obliterate the lighting system, which I believe is actually shot in somewhere in New York, but the stadium was destroyed in 1988. But nonetheless, he destroys the lights, and it's very fitting for the last scene from an old man to hit yet again another home run, and go out on top. And I think the one of the lines that really sticks with me, or it has stuck with me, is he said, I believe we have two lives: the life we learn with, and the life with. I'm just ruining this. I've clearly mistyped it.
Let's start it over.
I believe we have two lives: the life we learn with, and the life with after that. With or without the records, they'll remember you. And I really appreciated that. But with that being said, he did still want to have the records, it appears, because he was gone for 16 years and something did actually bring him back. But I appreciated most of his comments. And I think it's just the delivery of Robert Redford, in essence, is something I'm just never going to get, I'm never going to tire of.
Is Roy Hobbs a good guy? I mean, objectively, what do you think? Is he a good guy?
I don't know. I mean, this is a conversation we can have all day, but I don't know. I think generally he's a good guy. There's a lot of years that are missing that maybe could counter that, but I think generally he just believed in himself. I think all sports people do, and they as they should. When it comes down to it, I'd say he's a pretty kind individual. But
I mean, but and I do too. But there's obviously, he has some shortcomings, as all humans do. But the fact that he, had this barnyard romance with his, you know, young Glenn Close, and then he leaves, and literally the first woman that he sees and that tries to seduce him, he goes after, and that's his own fallacy. That's his own fault because he gets shot and with a silver bullet. By
have
the
you
way,
ever been seduced before?
oh for sure.
I mean, like, did you say no?
It depends on what situation I'm in. Do I have a significant other?
I'm not saying. Let's say there's no significant other. Let's say there is. Let's say you're an unmarried, seducible human. I think most men are going to be seduced and just want that. It's just like not me, of course. You, maybe.
Well, Roy Hobbs wasn't seduced by the money. He was his Achilles heel was women, especially in the First Lady in Black, as well as Memo, who Kim Basinger plays, who's absolutely gorgeous on screen. Seduces him as well. She just seduced me when I was watching it.
Fondling the balls. I just don't. Yeah, I don't think that's ever going to be an issue for who men are. sometimes, and it's never going to really take away my idea of like who's a good or a bad person. Now, if he is married with children and he's being seduced, then yeah, that's going to change my idea of who he is. But there's no children involved, allegedly, and yeah, it's not going to change my idea of him.
What about this is kind of a different subject, but what did you think of the team? Uh, the team hired a psychologist speaker to come and rally them up. Um, I think the recurring phrase is "losing is a disease as
Yeah,
curable as syphilis." Uh,
and Roy walks away in the middle of listening to that one too many times. Yeah, I mean, look, it's sometimes you got to get people to rally you up. That guy was talking syphilis, not the way to get a team pumped to go out there and hit a ball through 500 feet. But maybe it worked. I mean, maybe that was the part. It was less superstition, less Roy Hobbs, and maybe it was that guy's speech. Who knows? Who knows?
yeah,
But I do have
yeah.
something, a quote that I'll leave you with, a catchphrase where Bret Hart actually stole it from this movie, where he said, "The best that there is, the best that there was, and the best that there ever will be," is a quote from this movie. But Bret heard it and was like, "I'm stealing that, sir. I am stealing that." Which
Steal
I
away. That's great.
excellent. And I'll leave you with this. I like the movie. Didn't love it as much as the last time I saw it, but I still enjoy it. Robert Redford is always going to have a soft spot to me. I'll probably repeat this 1,000 times over, but there were 3 Oscar winners in the cast and 3 Oscar nominees: Robert Redford, Robert Duvall, and Kim Basinger, and then Glenn Close, Barbara Hershey, and Richard Farnsworth. Which is that's a like both movies were just packed with human beings.
I, and I feel like Randy Newman has won an Oscar before too.
Been on stage. I meant the actors themselves, not the. But
It's
yeah, you
true,
can.
but the talent all around
Yeah,
is there. Yeah.
but
Um,
I found
I
it.
have some quotes
Yeah, what are the quotes?
and some scenes that I really liked. I really liked the introduction of Pop Fisher. I thought his character was one of my favorite in the film. He should have been a farmer. Should have been a farmer. Um, but his introduction to Roy Hobbs and him saying him basically saying like, are you with the Salvation Army band? Like, he just doesn't believe that he could be a ball player. But the scene with Robert Redford, Roy Hobbs turning down the cash to the judge and Gus and all of them. And Gus says, if it isn't enough, tell us what you had in mind to hit away.
That's good.
And then he says, I thought I could rely on your honor, Hobbs. You're about to. That's great. I thought the writing in this was fantastic. It could be a little sentimental, but it was overall a great performance and a great watch.
Yeah, I think they could have actually delved more deeply into that 16-year period. I would have liked to connect more with the character. They also could have like represented the father more because when the bat actually gets destroyed, you're you know there's some level of regret or like what's going to happen now. But like I would actually like to see that tie a little more. And probably remove 15 more minutes of the movie just playing baseball, and I think that
I
would have been
think
a good transition.
I think the idea there with the bat breaking was Roy's transition from being the son to now being he just found out that he has a son watching him and he's the father now, and he takes the new bat given to him by the bat boy to crank that lights out home run. So I thought that was kind of poetic there.
I I looked this up as well about him hitting the cover off the ball when he was I think at his first at bat basically and like hit the cover off the ball and then he goes and hits the cover off the ball and they're like trying to figure out where the baseball is and it's just a ball of string
It's
and they're
just a
like
yarn, yeah, yarn of
yeah yeah
string of yarn.
and
The funniest. I literally laughed. I haven't laughed this hard in a kind of a shock way in a movie in a long time, and I think you know where I'm getting at here.
yeah
is Bump, played by the aforementioned Michael Madsen, who I was completely surprised that he was in this movie. But Bump is the other ball player that he's kind of taking money from the owners and everything like that. But then he starts playing well, and then one day, just all of a sudden, he goes out to catch a long fly ball, and he just burst through the back wall. And then all you see is that paper circling up, and it says bump dies after collision with wall. And I just burst out laughing. I did not expect it. It was hilarious.
It was hilarious, but you're missing out a key point to this. So basically, Robert Redford is in the same position in right field as old Ed Madsen is, and so basically they're filling in. Roy is now taking the right field position, and he's angry that he's not now going to be a bench warmer, and so they're like, "Well, you got one last chance. You got one last chance." And then his one last chance is literally going smack face into the wall, breaking it down and dying. And I was like, that solves that. Like, Jesus Christ, man. It was hilarious. Like I also laughed out loud. I was like, his one chance and he died? He's to a wall and he's dead? He died? Just what? And then just glosses over it. Oh, I guess Robert's gonna Roy's
the
gonna
story just moves on.
Yeah.
We're just gonna keep going. Yeah.
Spinning around newspaper, dead, moving along. Not even a note of like, well, guys, he was a good man. Like nothing. Just instantaneously next game.
And his girlfriend was Memo, who then just jumps over to Roy Hobbs. So everything falls into place.
Right field is where I guess the chicks are. So just to keep a note if you baseball players are out there. But nonetheless, I liked them. I like the baseball movies. I don't know if it's just baseball generally, but I used to like love baseball movies. I tended to like these less than the last time I saw them. Strangely, I think it's just there's a cheese factor as well, like with older '80s baseball movies.
What kind of cheese? What are we? Brie? Are we talking about soft cheese? Talking about like a hard Vermont cheddar? What do you think?
Definitely a spreadable, maybe like a pimento
Oh,
cheese. Yeah, because it was just like I get what you're trying to do, but sometimes it just doesn't come off very well. The tongue.
yeah.
But yeah, why don't we get to a scoring unless you have other platitudes to discuss?
Um, I think we covered everything that I wanted to cover in the natural. Uh, yeah, let's get to the ratings.
Well, all right then. I'm not looking at your scoring, but it appears that we all. I'm gonna actually just do this. I'm just gonna copy and paste.
We're pulling it up right now, and in the meantime, I will recite you a poem.
Okay, please do. I hope it's not 3
It,
minutes.
no, you just cut me off whenever. It looked extremely rocky for the Boston Nine that day. The score stood 2-4 with but an inning left to play, so when Coney died at second and Burroughs did the same, a parlor read the features of the patrons of the game. Staggering few got up to go, leaving there the rest with the hope that springs eternal within the human breast. For they thought, if only Casey could get a whack at that, oh, they'd put money now with Casey at the bat. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I hid your score. All right, go ahead.
Oh, we're doing scores now. By the way, I don't know how many times I've heard you say the entirety of that. Too many, and one of my favorite moment. I mean, this has happened. I don't know, multiple of times. When we were on Beale Street.
Yeah, I was in Memphis.
In Memphis, we were on Beale Street, and for whatever reason, I think you were trying to lead us along to get more money in your coffers. We were the cross country team, and we were traveling. We're what was it, track team? I can't even remember at this point. I think it was
cross country. Yeah.
Oh, was it?
I believe so.
So we're on Beale Street. We're at a restaurant, and there happens to be a stage with a microphone that's lit. And so we try to collect some money. I think it was like $20 to get you on stage to recite the entirety of Casey at the Bat, and you said no, and that turned to 40, and I think it turned to like $108 or something.
Yeah, it was in the three figures.
We definitely in that. I mean, it's 20 years ago. That's for a college student, $100. Get on stage. So you got on stage and did it, which was fantastic. Although 75% through, they're like, "What is happening right now? Like, is this really? Is he here for this? Did we pay?" Like, people are like looking confused. Like, you're supposed to be giving this, and they're like, this doesn't feel right. But you kept going.
I did.
Appreciated that.
I learned that poem in 8th grade. It was an English teacher that had everybody in the class say, "Hey, I want you to pick a poem. And you have to memorize it and say it in front of the class. And me being who I am, I decided to try and find the longest poem that I could, you know, digest and memorize. And I had the longest poem in the class, and I still remember to this day.
There's only one you do, but there was a moment in Texas once that I asked you to say it, but you were probably a little too inebriated, and there was a little mistake here and there. But nonetheless, 8 Men Out, best perform.
8 Men Out.
What do you give? What do you give? What do you give? I'm not.
I gave seven. I don't see your scores here. Can you open up yours? Anyways, I gave a 75. I thought they were all good performances. I really liked Eddie Seacott. I think he gave the best performance. Him and John Cusack were the most heartfelt. But 75.
Okay, I gave it an 80.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for both movies, the actors have done better movies, all of them, and but some of them were just still trying to find their acting chops, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But they're good. What about that quote? 8 Men Out. What do you think?
I keep going back to the say it ain't so, Joe. Say it ain't so. That, like I said, it kind of sums up the movie. But there was also a lot of funny quotes here. Even like when they're talking about the players not getting the money right away, and Sport Sullivan says, "You know what you do to feed a dray horse in the morning if you want a day's work out of him? What? Just enough to know he's hungry." So I thought the lines in there were good, but it's the say it ain't so. It's an iconic quote. It has to be above 70, 75, so I gave it 80.
To me, I might be dumb, but I'm not stupid. Terrific. I gave it an 85, but I also like the. Anyway, I liked it. I like the two quotes. Score.
Score. It wasn't as uh, the two movies are set in two different time periods, right? You got like 1939 versus 1919. Um, and we'll get into the other score, but I don't think this was as good. It was you kind of got those like old timey kind of music going on, but it wasn't anything that kind of blew me away. So it was a 70 for me.
There was no real music, so I gave it a 75. It's baseball music basically that is very typical
Yeah.
of baseball movies. Yeah. Editing.
Editing. Again, this is a story that's can be hard to follow and hard to digest, and it takes somebody with really good direction as well as good editing to make it work. I thought it was overall good. I give it an 80.
I also gave it an 80. I don't think that there was something bad. There was nothing terrific. It just was an 80. I'd say very basic. But yeah, I did like the editing and the twirling of newspapers,
The newspapers, yeah.
which is
The
always
montages were great too because they didn't have to show the whole baseball game or any of the baseball game really. You just
yeah,
saw the headline and that we're moving on.
yeah. You get the
Um,
feeling.
Screenplay writing. I feel like, and you could agree or disagree with me on this, but I feel like when movies are based off of a book, a novel, if you will, they're usually a little bit, not always, but usually a little bit better with the writing and the story. So I give it an 80.
Also an 80. I didn't think again. It was. I guess 80 is my new like just passing to some extent, where it's like
Yeah.
you're doing okay, or slightly above average, but like there's considering um the people, the actors that were signed on to this, it could have been better. I thought. I think you would it got a little bigger pop, so an 80, and that's also
Yeah.
what I did for directing. Another 80. I felt like um, the direction could have been a little bit better with especially the characters or the humans that you've chosen, but nonetheless, pretty good. I still like the spinning newspaper. That won't get old.
Yeah. I gave it a 75, so just a tick below, but I felt like if they could have, the casting was good, but like, again, it was hard to tell certain people apart. And if they could have given a little bit more nuance to that, it would have made the story a little bit easier to watch and kind of understanding what these motives were for each player. But 75.
Yeah. So it looks like overall, I mean, I don't see your score, but overall, I gave it an 80 average. Looks like for 8 Men Out, which is,
Cool.
it's okay, run of the mill. So natural, I'll go first. So best performance, I gave an 85. I would actually say it's like slightly better performative, but they're the actual actors themselves across the board, I think, were just slightly better in the natural than they were in 8 Men Out, but not that should have any effect upon the score. But 85. That's about the highest I can give it, though. I could see an 80, me giving it 80 as well, though.
Yeah, I gave it an 80. I thought, Robert De Niro was perfectly cast as
Robert Duvall.
Robert Duvall. I meant Robert Redford. Too many Roberts.
Oh,
Um, Robert Redford was perfectly cast as the older um, Hobbs, not as the younger Hobbs. Uh, I thought Kim Basinger licked her lips a little bit too much, but
what did you dislike about the movie, Steven? Well, Kim, she kind of in Batman, she didn't lick her lips as much, and I really liked her in that. But this one, I don't know, not so nice.
I mean, it's a thing that just kind of annoyed me, man. But anyways, I digress. I gave it. I think probably my favorite performance was Pop Fisher. I thought he played the perfect curmudgeon kind of baseball coach out
Yeah, he
there.
was great. Yeah, he was great. But my favorite of the quotes was surprisingly I gave it an 80. But in both movies, I didn't think there was too many items to point to other than like one or two quotes. But nonetheless, I did like the stepping on the toes, and um, I like some of the quotes that were in relation to like the derivation of Odyssey. But nonetheless, I gave it an 80.
I gave it a 90. I thought some of the quotes were really good. As the one that you flubbed earlier, that first one about having two lives. Um, yeah, I thought that they did a good job with those quotes.
The score I loved. I mean, Ryan, I looked him up, and he just has crushed in life. And I always look for like a John Williams type inspiration to film and music, and he really did it for me. So I'm actually going to probably go through most of his movies to see what he has done in the past, or even his own adventures and into music as a band member. But I gave it an 85. I actually probably, looking back, would give this a higher score, but it was so engrossed in the movie, the music was, that it just almost became like this natural thing, and you kind of had to separate it. But I think the score really set the tone. I gave it an 85.
I gave it a 90. Yeah, I thought Randy Newman's score was class above a lot of scores in it. It gave a certain tone to this movie, especially in certain scenes that just brought more drama or more lightheartedness to it. It was great.
Yeah, and then the editing, the same, literally the same application of editing as in, I guess, these two baseball movies, which were very similar. Um, I gave it an 80 as well, which is pretty much
Yeah, I gave it just a little bit below on the other 75, just because uh, I felt like there was instances with 8 Men Out that like it was a little bit more. The montages were a little bit better. That's kind of the reason for me.
screenplay and writing. I gave it 85. I enjoyed the story a whole lot and the writing. Robert Redford really brought the character to life, but I still want to know more of the screenplay in relation to those 16 years. Still do.
I got an idea. They should create a 10-episode Netflix series about those 16 years of him selling insurance across Long Island.
Stephen Rankin, actor connoisseur, Mr. Lightning, aka. You want to come out acting chops and apply those to the big screen, silver screen these days?
I'm going to stay behind the camera on this one.
All right. Well, you do
Yeah.
you. So anyway, 85. And then last but not least, directing, I gave an 80, same as 8 Men Out. Directing was, slightly above average, I would say, but nothing. There was no moments I was just like blown away. I did like the lighting in the shadow play, basically, of a lot of the shots. A lot of dust. Seems like people were sucking in a lot of dust. But nonetheless, I did like the shadow play and the use of lighting throughout.
Yeah, I mean, I think the directing was a little bit better than 8 Men Out. Like you said, the lighting, even like just just rewatch that last home run scene when the lights explode and he's running around the base and it just looks like fireworks are falling down, and it's gorgeous. It's like cinema at what you need to do to create a visual image with music. It was fantastic. 85.
It was very lovely, and that leaves us to the fact is I have one score that I've changed on my sheet. That let me see.
Oh, you changed your score. The score. Okay.
Yep. So I'm going to change it on mine, and then we are going to tally our scores for this to see what we are working with. All right. Last. So it looks like you had a 76.5 and 8 Men Out. You gave The Natural an 83.5. I gave The Natural an 83, and I gave 8 Men Out 80. So our Scene Weekly score for 8 Men Out was 78.25. Natural is 83.25. And actually, you better watch out for the next couple of weeks. We are actually going to create a website and have all of the scores that we have scored so far. So there's, I think, a list of about 20 movies. And next week is probably our most anticipated podcast in the history of life. And I can't imagine it going any better than this one. So I would be on the lookout for it. Do you have any comments that you'd like to suggest or intimate about?
Well, here's the thing. We're on episode 10. We've done 10 of these now, right? We're 10 in.
Yeah, we have.
And we need to get to 11. Does this podcast go to 11?
I think it does.
Can we make it happen?
It does. I think it does. But we'll have to see. Sometimes these things don't go to 11. You never know.
Yeah. I just hope we don't get any like reviews on our podcast that this is just a shit sandwich.
Shit sandwich?
Yeah. Maybe I do. Well, I don't know.
Until next week, you can lick my love pump, and I cannot wait to see you next. I'm
going to be wearing my flesh tuxedo. Don't worry. We can go on and on. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.